Hello, welcome to our Core versus More video series. In today's session, we're going to look at returns management, Core GP starting off, and then followed up with RMA process within the GP field service module. A quick look at side-by-side comparison. Over to you, Brittany.
Hi everyone, today we are going to be talking about returns, specifically customer returns. Right now I actually see GP here and we have our core sales entry or SOP entry screen. So we're going to be talking about a couple ways we can do returns in GP. At the beginning, we're going to be talking about our core SOP GP return that we're used to seeing. Okay, and then we will also see our RMA field service, which has some differences, and we're going to take a look at both. So right now you see my SOP entry screen. First things first, what we need for return is we need to put the return on the actual customer themselves, and we need to bring that inventory back into our warehouse or warehouses, depending how much we're bringing back. With the SOP entry return, it does those two things in one. It does my customer return, and it also deals with my inventory side as well. So we can start a return one of two ways inside GP. I can start it by just taking my type, flipping it down to return, and picking my return type. For those of you who might have multiple avenues of returns, types of return, lines of business returns, you can actually have as many types of returns in your SOP entry that you need to have. Just like you can for invoice or order or back order, same idea, you can have more than one return. And of course, if we actually hop into that type, you can also have some of its own options as well, like being able to delete it or void it, all that kind of good stuff as well, okay? All that stuff we're used to seeing inside of GP. Now, of course, we need all that great information, like what customer do we want to talk about, what address do we want, what date do we want, what batch, what currency, all that great stuff. Okay, of course, as well, we can't do a return without knowing what item we're going to have and how many of these we're going to be returning. Now, if you notice in GP, it actually wants to know what kind of return quantity type I'm using. So I can put it into my on hand or in use or damaged. I'm going to put it into on hand just for now for ease of use. Of course, my unit price, we would expect to see a negative here, but because this is already returned, GP shows it as a positive. So I'm putting a $50 credit onto my customer. Okay, so that's one way we can do that SOP return. And once this SOP return gets posted, of course, I've put 50 bucks onto my Aaron Fitz, and I've put my item back into my stock. Okay. We have another way of doing a return as well. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this return. We have another way of doing this return as well. If you'd like to see some more information, maybe we want to know what invoice they returned and link them together or all that kind of good stuff so you can see it go out, come back in, and maybe add some information to that. Underneath this additional menu, and if you're using not this toolbar, it might be hiding for you over here in your additional tab, we can actually do what we call create return. And it's going to tell me my RMA type is not selected. I'm just going to pull this off to the side here. I now say what kind of return I want to do. Oops, sorry. I'm going to apply for a credit. I've selected my wrong one. Sorry, guys. I select what reason code. These reason codes can be really handy for us. Maybe we want to start tracking why customers are returning stuff to us. Could be for an unknown, could be an error, could be that we're going to throw it in the garbage. Whatever you want to track, you can start having reason codes. You might be used to seeing reason codes in other areas, specifically like inventory, where we have our reason codes for inventory adjustments. Similar thing what we're doing here as well. We can have those reason codes. So I'm going to go ahead and just pick unknown. We don't know why they're returning it. What customer we're talking about. And we can go pick up our original SOP invoice of what it is we want to return and what item or items we want on there. And we're going to go ahead and select all here, and it's going to tell me the return it creates. And I'm going to post my journals here. It's going to show me this return traveler and tell me what my new RMA number. Now you'll notice I have my edit list that came out to me. It says this is the document number, this is the item that's going to be coming back, and this is my amount. Great. I also have what we call a return traveler. This is one we can print out, put in there, put it in an envelope. If we want it to roam around our warehouse for whatever reason, we have some information to us. Again, if you are using lot or serial numbers, of course, SOP returns are fully compliant or compatible with using serial numbers and lot numbers. And of course, if you're using them, you would see them in here as well. Okay. Now that I've created that return and it created my next return number for me in line, you'll notice that I actually have this, part here, and in my original number is now linked to my original return, is all linked together now. So nice and neat and tucked together for us. Now that you see what it also brings in my unit price that I sold it for as well, just to keep it nice and neat for us. It also puts it into my RMA credit batch. So you have one of two ways to do your SOP return, and what the SOP return does accomplish for us is put the return on the customer's account. So you can then apply that return to any invoices that might be outstanding or become outstanding in the future. And of course, put that inventory back into our stock. If you stay with us, we're going to take a look at our RMA field service, which has a few more options inside of there.
So, welcome to our video series on Core versus More. Over to you, Brittany.
We have something in GP, a series called Field Service. It's included when you have GP Extended Pack. If you're unsure if you have GP Extended Pack, please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to guide you through whether or not you have GP Extended. Field Service has a whole whack load of tools inside of it, and one of them is actually called Returns Management, or RMA, which allows us to get into those more in-depth or complicated returns, because let's be honest, returns as a whole are generally kind of messy, kind of complicated. So let's take a peek of what returns management or an RMA and field service can do for you. So you notice I actually have on my left-hand side, I have field service here. So we're just going to play inside of returns management. Now you'll notice there's a whole ton in here, and we will also in a later one be talking about RTVs, which is our return to vendors. Okay. If you have questions about any of the further parts in this, again, please feel free to reach out to us. So let's jump into that RMA. All right, so you'll notice here I pulled up our RMA entry screen, and it's a little bulkier or a little bit more robust than that SOP return screen we see in Core GP. Okay, so you'll notice we have our standard information that we have here, like our RMA number, our type, what customer are we talking about, where do we want to bill it to, our currency, all that good juicy stuff we're used to seeing inside GP. However, now we have a couple more options. You'll notice that we have this RMA type. Now, I just want you to keep that RMA type in the back of your head. We're going to come back to this in a minute, just for the pure fact that it has a lot of options for us. So one of the biggest differences between our SOP return and our field service return is it allows us to have more steps in the field service return. So the first step we actually have is to issue out that RMA to say, who do we want to have issue it out from the customer? What billing address do we want to have it to? What currency, what item or items we want to have returned, how many of them, all that great stuff. But now you notice that we actually have some additional information in here of where they ship, where's the customer shipping it from? What's the tracking number? What's the customer PO? What's the reference number? Once all that information is put inside of there, we can issue out an RMA to the customer. They can print it out, or maybe you send a printed copy. They can shove it in the box, tape it all up, and send it back to you, or whatever the case may be. So you can have that issuing of the RMA. The next step that needs to happen in an RMA when you use field service is what we call RMA receiving. So this is exactly what it sounds. Once the customer sends that return that they've started with you and it ends up at your back door or it comes in, whatever the case may be, we now have this ability that we now do our receiving. So once the receiving is done, we can go ahead and post our receiving. We're going to hop back into that RMA entry screen. Now we have the quantity of 1 and 1 received. Once we actually receive 1 into our warehouse, now starts our options. Now, if you remember I said a couple minutes ago that RMA type, we're going to circle back around to that. This RMA type drives what we ends up happening to this RMA. And you might say to me, Brittany, a return is a return. Well, yes and no. So let's talk about the various things that can happen to your RMA based on the type. First things first, the option is none. Okay. The next is a repair and return. A customer might return some items to you that we're going to repair. We're going to throw some parts, some labor, throw that all in there, fix it all up, and send it back to them. Well, of course, when we start throwing in parts and labor, we want that cost to be reflected in the cost of the goods sold or the cost of the good returned. So having that customer path allows us to A, track all the parts and labor we put into it, B, track the cost, and C, roll it all together so we have that. The next one is what we call our credit. Pure old, we don't care if we get our parts back, we're just going to give the customer a credit back on their account. No more, no less. Replacement. We could have what we call a replacement in here where they send us one and we say, oh, there's no hope for this item. We're just going to give you a straight old replacement. By the way, for those of you who may be using serial or lot numbers, this is fully integrated with serial and lot. You might be swapping out one serial for another serial number. Totally normal inside of here, and that's actually what this is meant for. The last, but not least in this case, is advanced cross ship. This is where if you're going to have the situation that you're going to send out a replacement part to the customer, and once they receive that part, they're going to send you back the default or the returned part. So you can have that cross shipment going. And of course, you'll see that I also have statuses here as well. So this RMA allows you to track statuses of, have I received it? Is it partially received? And is all my parts and labor in there? So you can help keep track of those RMAs because we know RMAs can get tricky and complicated. We have all that in there. Now you might say to me, Brittany, I have more than 4 different kinds of returns. I have all kinds of types of returns. Yes, GP can accommodate that. We do have 5 different types, but we can have as many RMA types as we want. We actually create them, pick their customer path, and then that way you can have them for different departments, maybe different lines of businesses if that's what you have going, so you can keep track of those. Okay. So of course, we always have those types, and those types will become really important to you. The next thing we want to talk about inside of here is this processes. Now, if you remember back, I actually had mentioned something about RTVs. Well, that's not as exciting as it sounds. RTVs are our returned vendors. RMAs are fully in line with RTVs. So in case you have the scenario where you receive a part back and then you then require to maybe claim a warranty with your vendor, or you want to swap it out with a vendor, or just do a return to your vendor in general, you can link your RMA and your RTV together. So in case you are the middleman of the customer is going to send you the part and then you're going to send the part out to the vendor, you can have that option inside of here. So this is where we actually link together in what we call processes. You'll notice I actually have a work order open on this one. This is if I was going to throw in parts and labor. Now, of course, I can have an RTV and an order. Depends on what we're doing inside of here. Okay. We also have additional information in here like our serial and lot. As I said, it is fully serial and lot compatible. Okay. And then you'll see the additional information we have here, such as tracking numbers, customer PO, references, all that great information. Now, what happens if we have those fun situations like maybe we fixed it and there's a part of that cost we're going to charge the customer, or maybe there's a restocking fee that we're going to charge the customer? We can do that as well. Inside my customer path chain link, I can have a repair price or an invoice cost or a restocking cost that we can put inside here to add onto it, because maybe the return was free, but we're still going to charge for a restocking fee, or really just a charge to fix it, maybe view it and repair it. Those are our options inside here as well. One thing to note about field service RMAs is that when you do field service RMAs, They are fully compatible with SOP and POP, which means a SOP, POP, and inventory, which means they use SOP, POP, and inventory transactions to move stuff around in GP. Because this is a part of GP and it lays inside of GP, it uses all of its natural functionalities, which if you're using, maybe you're emailing for your SOP documents, because it creates your SOP invoicing, you can then email out to your RMA all that great information you can have inside of there. Okay. Once you get into more complicated returns as well, of course, you could have multiple lines, change your types. You have those options inside of there. So if you're looking for something a little bit more robust than our SOP return that we saw earlier, take a look into your field service RMA. If you would like to know some more information, or you just want to take a deeper dive into returns, because returns can be a little sticky and a little complicated, feel free to reach out. We're happy to go down the route of RMAs. And thanks for having us today.
Thank you, Brittany. For those that are new to Endeavour and GP Support North, 3 lines of business: advisory services, implementations, and ongoing upgrades and support. You can reach out to Trish to find out more about what version of GP you're on and if you have extended pack. Otherwise, you can also find us online at www.gpsupportnorth.com. Thank you.